Juneteenth is known as Black Independence Day. This national holiday is a time to connect with loved ones and celebrate African American culture. I feel this is a time to celebrate our accomplishments, our inventions, our contributions to the world since we were freed from slavery. Oh yeah, thank you, Abe Lincoln.
For me, Juneteenth is a moment of reflection, remembrance, and celebration for my people and our freedom.
What Juneteenth means to me is a time in history where slaves had been freed, but not the slaves that were in Texas. They weren't freed until years later. So for Juneteenth, we celebrate them, we remember them, and we never forget.
You know, when I think of America, I can only think of how it was built. And America was built on the backs of slaves, you know, people that were stripped from their homelands and brought here and forced into, you know, working for free, forced into being ripped from their families, from their homelands, from their culture, and brought here and worked to death to the core solely for capital gains. And it was inhumane. It was brutal. And it's a dark stain on the history of America. So to think about Juneteenth and what it means, it's the day that these Black people were freed from slavery. And to me, that's a day that should be celebrated. And it's a day that, you know, we should hold near and dear. And it's a part of American history, not just Black history, but American history.
What does Juneteenth mean to you?
I feel like this holiday is a very important reminder of the end of slavery here in America and the ongoing struggle for racial justice and equality.
So do you think we should lift every voice and sing every day?
Oh, of course. Black is beautiful.
Juneteenth and what it means to me. While I'm incredibly thankful that the shackles are no more, and I do pay great homage to my ancestors, I cannot ignore the struggle that is still very real today. But from the words of one of the greatest to ever hit this earth, up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide. Welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. God bless you all.
Juneteenth, where do I even start? So much to unpack here. Let me start by saying that some of the opinions shared in this view will be opinions of my own and should not be taken as fact. But with that being said, with that being the case, I grew up in New York City to be exact. And I don't recall as a young man hearing about Juneteenth in school. I don't recall ever celebrating Juneteenth as a young man. I do recall several cookouts for the July 4th. Remember my family celebrating July 4th, but I was almost an adult before even hearing of Juneteenth and what it meant. Juneteenth is indeed a federal holiday that celebrates the emancipation of enslaved African Americans. The irony in that is President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, but no one knew about it. You know, as a result of it, African American slaves were allowed to fight and bear arms in the Civil War, which I believe led to a quicker victory for the North. I also believe that the South fought vigorously because they did not want to have to give up their slaves. They basically had indentured workers who would work for them at no cost and received mass wealth from owning people as property. But I guess freedom finally came on June 19th in 1865. Well, at least officially it did, because of, at the end of the war, these slaves were now free due to the victory. However, most of the slaves couldn't read, and no one was really telling them that as a result of the war ending, that they were now freed men. So many of the slaves continued to work as indentured servants because they had no idea that they were now free and could earn wages and be allowed to walk and go wherever they wanted, which was obviously against the law. Now, knowing all of this and missing so many years, I make sure that not only do I celebrate Juneteenth, but try to do something productive. And I won't go into what that is because that's a personal choice and preference. I think what I'd like to share is that even with the huge wealth discrepancies, that there were freed men that would go on to become extremely wealthy in this country. And my Juneteenth celebration this year is going to come a little early because I am going to recommend that most viewers that don't know about the story of Black Wall Street do some research on one of the wealthiest Black communities that ever was in the United States. It was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Blacks were thriving with banks and businesses and hospitals and schools. And as a result of them building a community within a community, something took place, and it was extremely devastating. We talk about 9/11, and we talk about other huge tragedies that took place on American soil, but very rarely do I ever hear about the devastation that was Black Wall Street. So do your research and celebrate Juneteenth. God bless.
The Bert Show.